Uh, Why don't we do a roll call? Rob?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sylvia,
Here.
Bob Bender,
Here.
me here, Ed Green,
I'm here.
okay, Bob Fanuzzi. Not yet. David Gelman.
Here, sorry.
Yep, here. Ramdat.
Here.
Ted Morris. Charles Merdler.
So Rob, I'm not sure, the Dio was the person who was making noise, I think, during those two for both
Oh, okay.
Ramdad and for Ed, so you may just want to make sure they're here.
Yeah, I got them. Yep. Well, Ted Morris. Nope. Chuck Merdler. Nope. Omar Murray. I saw Omar.
Omar was, oh, he's coming in
Yeah, I
now.
see his picture. Yeah, there he goes.
He's coming in.
Okay, I'll come back. Dan Paternick.
Where's that?
So Omar, I think your mic is off, Omar. I see your picture, but I don't hear anything. Dan, Laura is here. Nick, not yet. Marty Walpoff, I saw you earlier.
Here.
Julia Gomez.
Here.
I'm sorry, I'm present.
Got you, Omar. Diavaris.
Yes,
Sonia.
sorry, I was having technical issues.
Okay. Sergio.
I'm here.
Got you. Sergio, not yet. Deb Travis. She just said she was.
Present.
We'll go back to Bob Fanuzzi.
I am here.
Oh, he is here. Ted Morris again. Chuck Merdler. Not yet. Okay. Nick Fazio again. Nope.
Well,
And-
we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Yep.
Yes. Welcome
Rosemary
everyone.
has her hand up.
Ah,
Think,
Rosemary?
I think, Madam Chair, you forgot a member.
Oh. Rosemary.
Rosemary.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you. Okay, the minutes were distributed. Are there any comments on the minutes? Hearing no comments, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, is there anyone opposed to the minutes? Is there anyone abstaining on the minutes? Okay,
we have one
Rosemary.
hand,
Yes,
Rosemary.
yes. And Rosemary, I did not give that name to Rob, and that's why it was not called. And that's on me. Rosemary Ginty is now added to Executive Committee as a past chair, recent chair.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why.
Yeah, I was working off the November.
Exactly, of course.
Yep,
Of course.
yep, okay.
Yes, yes,
Thank you. Sorry, Rosemary.
yes. Okay, now I'll just move on to my report. And first announcement involves SCREE. As you know, we lost two SCREE members, Jill and Georgia Santiago. And I want to welcome two new members, Camelia Tepelis and Julia Gomez to SCREE, and they'll be great additions.
I'm sorry, could you back up? What
Yes.
about Georgia?
We had lost Georgia.
To the committee or the board?
No, as a member of SCREE.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
A bit of clarification.
No, I said I had an announcement for SCREE. So we've lost Jill Towns and Georgia from the SCREE committee. So we're welcoming two new members, Camelia and Julia. And I'm sure they're going to be great additions. My second announcement, Kira is getting married on December 15th, and she's been very shy about it. She has, well, I mean, some of you know, but how she's planning the wedding and all these different things and all. She's got a lot of energy, so
Did you say
congratulations.
this Sunday?
No,
No,
the
December
18th.
18th.
And Laura, I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
if I
Well,
have
regardless.
energy.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Does that mean you're taking Monday off?
Yeah, I'll be taking a few days leading up to it and a few days after.
Okay.
So that's very exciting news.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
Are you going to give him back his cell phone now?
I'm sorry, what, David?
Oh, no, he's still pay my bill. My phone number comes up with his name. That's what
Oh.
David's referring to.
Ah, I remember it well. Okay, so let me give a little update on the whole homeless shelter and where we're at. As you know, the Department of Homeless Services and the CEO of AAPCI will be attending the December 7th land use meeting. And I'll just back up a little bit what's gone on in November. November 15th, Councilman Dinowitz organized a meeting with Steve Banks and Erin Drinkwater, the Deputy Commissioner, and all the elected officials, and a few of us from the community board attended. We did learn more about the program at this meeting, but it was, we were not successful in changing the model of 130 men. You know, we asked those questions, or the type of shelter or any of that. It clearly was not negotiable on their part. They said it would take a lot of different financial arrangements in order to make those changes, reduce the numbers. And we did send a question to them about that, asking them to please, when they come December 7th, let us know what the financial implications of making a change would be. We have sent weeks ago 24 questions, which they said they will answer in writing. And we're waiting for that. Let's see, we did learn a few programmatic points that, for example, if someone is problematic at the shelter, they will be removed, that person can be removed to another shelter. The reason it's a 34-year contract is that it makes it more beneficial for the AAPCI to have a more favorable mortgage and bank and, you know, financial security. So they're making all their contracts now very, very long. Instead of in the past, they would do, say, 9 years and then renew and renew. So that was the reason for that. Of course, we asked about when we could get the RFP, which is very important. We can't get that until 2022 when the contract is final. We could not get the contract, they said, until after the MOX hearing, the Mayor's Office of Contract hearing, and that took place on the 16th. I think I sent the exec committee, I did send my testimony, which was based on our land use resolution. Dan also testified at that, and 25 residents testified at that MOX hearing, asking for this contract not to be approved. The contract is for 195 million, and it's a 34-year contract. Subsequent to the November 16th MOX hearing, we had a call with Vincent Pulo, who is the agency chief contracting officer for the Department of Social Services, to view the preliminary draft contract. This was maddening because you can imagine having a contract up on the screen and you know, our little group trying to read that. It's 234 pages. So it really wasn't, you know, an exercise in futility. But we did learn certain things. Let's see.
And Laura, just to
Yeah.
add to that, we
Sure,
have
please.
had
me get
some
my notes.
members go down to look at the contract, and we're also working on scheduling an appointment to go view it in person.
Yes, Dan, I understand, went down today, but, and I'm sure he'll want to report on what he saw. The contract has not been sent to the controller's office yet. That is the next step. And the controller's office has received our resolution and our testimony from the Mox hearing. And from what I understand, hundreds of letters. The role of the controller is to register this contract. And if it's not registered, then the AAPCI, the nonprofit, doesn't get paid. So our goal here is to have the contract not get registered in December, because he has to answer all our questions and issues, and it will be rolled over to the next administration. And that is the best at this juncture that we can hope for, and then we continue to fight another day. But the process really works against us, because homeless shelters are not subject to ULURP. They're not subject to FOIL. They're not subject to really any community overview, even what's put forward by the Fair Share, documents. It's just, bear in mind, it was basically 6 weeks from our notification to this contract. Now, it is a preliminary contract, so there are no signatures, there's no RFP, it still has a ways to go. But they've closed, the window is closing on us rapidly, and the process is very, very bad. Let's see. Are there any questions? David, you were at one of the meetings. Omar, anyone, Marty? Anybody have anything they want to add? Kira?
Well, I'm still convinced that, and now that we know that Banks is leaving, got a better deal, better gig, this is his gift to the city.
Yeah.
Legacy, I challenge that he's more concerned about numbers than he is about people. He swears he's not. They know all the people. Nonsense. But putting one of these homes in every district, every community board district in the city, is how he solved this problem, which he didn't do for what, 7.5 years? We get the gift.
Another detail I just recalled was that I asked, when are we going to see the building plans? And that won't be for a while. They're only at 30% complete. I mean, obviously, there's nothing at the Department of Buildings yet, but they're 30% complete. So that will be a while. So everything is like a ghost. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Perhaps Dan, when he comes, he looked at it today, and I understand, Rosemary, thank you. You want to go down. I plan to go down. Kira plans to go down. But again, it's the preliminary contract, so signatures and some key stuff is not going to be there, because it's a draft. But the board is working, we're working to do what we can. Tomorrow, Kira has a call with the attorney from Legal Aid. Thank you to Nick. I don't know if he's on the call, but Nick is on the call. We're matching up the businesses who stand to be displaced with an attorney who can help them with their contract and give them some advice. So we're working on that end for the merchants. And that's it. So we might circle back to this later. I don't see any hands, so why don't I move over to the treasurer's report? Theo?
Hi, thank you, Laura. Hi, everybody. So you should have received, the report, I believe earlier today or yesterday. Okay, so we have allocated 87,544 from our total budget so far, and we have $181,810 remaining for fiscal year 2022. Following that is the table summarizing our progress on the other than personal services budget. And currently, we've allocated 7,931 and have 27,089 remaining. There are budget modifications this month, and that's in Addendum A, which I'll review. I'll finish the report and then we can go over it. So after that is to 1.3 with our purchase orders and accounts payable, showing we hold 5,693 in encumbered funds this month. And right after that is the rent and energy, always there for our reference. We don't maintain it, OMB does. We've allocated 19,044 on that and have 48,128 remaining. And then following that is Addendum A. So this is a budget mod that we're proposing. We are moving, so we have code 499, which is the holding code, where we have 20,000 at the beginning for fiscal year 2022. We're proposing taking $4,034 out of that and distributing it, moving it over to supplies and materials, moving 3,000 for that. And there was $184 to advertising. I believe Kira, you can explain. There was a
Yeah, I
balance
can
for our
explain.
advertising budget.
Yeah, I can explain all of them if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
Now that we're back in the office, I just think it's a good idea to transfer some money into the supplies and general material fund. Working from home, we've saved some money in the office, but now, like I said, now that we're back, throughout the year, we just have to purchase different supplies. The advertising was an outstanding bill from one of the previous hires to one of the local newspapers that we were working on clearing up, which we did. And then maintenance and repairs, as some of you may know, our HVAC system broke over the summer. We needed to get it repaired, and we didn't have enough money in that line. So this is just gonna replenish that code. This is something we typically do halfway throughout the year. And, I expect that we'll be doing another budget modification come the spring so that we can spend the rest of our funding. Bob, I see your
And
hand
there's a
up.
resolution.
You're muted.
I did have just a procedural question for Laura regarding the homeless shelter question, but I will wait until
Yeah,
make
I
sure
was gonna say-
everybody's. I know we were kind of stunned, Laura. I apologize. Stunning news, but I just wanted to wait and make sure no one else had any questions about this budget that you're presenting.
David?
Yeah, just a quick question. You said that now we're back in the office. So last year, I guess 2 years ago, when we were largely in the office, was supplies and materials in the vicinity of $4,000?
Yeah, this is all
Okay.
sort of in line
Okay.
with what we need to buy throughout the year. Ink, paper,
Yeah.
laminatings, different things like that.
Right, but it's in line with the prior
Yeah.
full office years. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other
So there
questions
is
on
a
the budget?
resolution.
So we do have a resolution for the budget modification, which is consistent with what we did in years past. And here it is.
Whereas to support the work of the board's office, a budget mod for FY '22 has been prepared and is attached to the December treasurer's report. It approves the budget modification. Okay, so this is our boilerplate that we use. Are there any questions for Dio or for Kira?
David?
Sorry, I would just make it a little bit more meaningful. Just to say, reflecting changes necessary for supplies, advertising, and maintenance. That's all. Because it's, I think, way too generic.
Okay, is there any discussion on that, or Laura, what do you think that's okay? I think in the past, Roz put this together with Rosemary, and I think the point was for it to be broad, just as a boilerplate, and the detail was in the addendum. I see Rosemary, your hand is up. I don't know if you want to speak to this, or.
Well, I just would note, I wouldn't go with boilerplate. I don't mind using it as a template, but the way it's written to send it forward is meaningless.
Okay,
Right,
yeah.
So Kira, may I?
Sure.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, Rosemary.
I think you're quite right. This was done by Roz and brilliantly. Thank God she set us up on the right path for a lot of the efforts that are being made by the office and will continue to be made in the budget and budget modifications. The only thing that maybe would help, like a David, Kira, is there's an addendum. The addendum has the detail. And I think the addendum fills out the resolution. And quite frankly, the addendum is more important than a few words in the resolution, because the addendum shows where the money comes from, where the money's going. So that addendum, right? Am I saying the right thing, Kira?
Yes.
The addendum shows where the money's coming from, where it's going to. That's the essence of the budget modification. And so, not that I'm criticizing what's on the screen, but I think when that becomes part of the resolution, it's full and complete. Did I say that right, Kira?
100, yeah, 100%.
No, that's helpful. That's
And
helpful.
you may be able to just cut and paste. or
Yeah, I was
copy and
just,
paste the 3 or 4 lines and just stick them in.
yeah, I was gonna ask you, David, if that satisfies your,
that
I
works for
can
me.
just put the image in at the bottom.
That's fine.
Yeah, I was
Dio,
gonna say that's
I
what-
see your hand.
yeah, I was just gonna say that's what we've done in the past as well. Just put the image of the chart, the addendum in the resolution.
Okay, good. Any other questions on the budget issue?
I have a procedural question on that. And
Go ahead, Sergio.
thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble seeing the document. I know it's generic, but does it adopt the addendum as a part of the resolution?
I don't know. I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry, Sergio. I believe it does. When the image is there, I think it will make it more clear.
So
And the language actually says it's attached to the treasurer's report.
Yeah, but I'll just
Right.
attach it to the resolution.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So but I'm saying perhaps the boilerplate should, if it's always accompanied by an addendum, could read the next addendum is, the attached addendum is adopted as part of this resolution, or something to that effect, because,
Yeah.
so that it's all one document. Something,
Yeah, I can-
we often put things in like the next addendum is adopted as if set forth fully herein, or something like that. So
Okay,
that
I
it's
can
clear
add that.
it's a
And-
2-page document and the details are there.
I will add something to that effect to the be it resolved for the board
Thank you.
meeting. Sure.
Helpful.
Thank you.
Anything else on the budget? Okay, so we'll circle back now to you, Bob Finuzzi.
Thanks, Laura. I kind of was lost track. Was there any final word from the Health Committee on the homeless shelter? I know they had a draft resolution, and is there any future meeting planned for an appearance of homeless services to the community? And what committee would that be part of if it is?
You know what, Bob, we did not have 2 resolutions after all. We went
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
I know.
land use
Yeah.
resolution, and that covered it. So Health and Hospitals did not put
They
put
did-
through a
okay.
separate one. I
Okay,
don't know if you were here to, they're coming back, AAPCI and Department of Homeless Services.
and to what committee?
To land use on December 7th.
Land use.
Yes, the agenda is out.
Okay,
So that's their next step there.
okay.
Any other questions? Dan, you had gone down today for the contract. I see Dan is on now. Dan,
Yes, I'm here.
good. Do you want to say anything about what you saw today?
It wasn't today. I went down yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Okay, I'm sorry.
I was able to sit for about an hour and a half, and I could put together my notes, and I'll send the Chuck, the other vice chairs, and stuff my notes on it.
Okay, I want to
Obviously,
thank you. You weren't here, but I thank you for going down and also for testifying at the Mox hearing. So,
Gotcha.
okay.
Did you guys did you guys had an event?
We had Monday, we
Was
met.
that discussed? If you already discussed it, you don't have to
Yeah.
say it again. I know.
Yeah, no, I kind of already discussed it.
Okay.
But it was frustrating for 234 pages, going through it. Much better to have it in front of you. But we did discuss also that important things, because it was preliminary and a draft, that like the RFP, we're not going to be in it. But anyway, the next step is the controller's office, and we hope to influence that. So anyway, we'll talk again and make up some notes, and we'll circle back on that. But thank you very much, Dan, for for schlepping down there. Appreciate it.
Yep. And all.
So district managers report, Kira.
Laura,
Yeah.
I would note that the agenda for land use only mentions DHS. It does not mention the representative from AAPCI showing up. And I think we should inform the community of that.
Yes. In fact, today, I notified, there's a group called Attention Riverdale that has, the whole community involved, that both were going to be there. And so.
But I would issue a revised agenda identifying the CEO.
I'll discuss that with Chuck. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, Kira.
I'm just sorry, I'm writing down a note about the revised agenda. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy Hanukkah. I have some good news that I just shared with Nick and Laura before the meeting. The Doe Fund will be coming back to Marble Hill to remove graffiti along the Broadway corridor. As you can remember, they came a few months back, but they'll be doing another round just in time for the holidays. I know graffiti on Broadway has gotten really bad, so it's good timing. We received a letter from the Comptroller's office today, just thanking the community board for our partnership and support of their office while Scott Stringer was Comptroller, now that he's wrapping up his tenure. I emailed the executive committee about an upcoming training given by the Committee on Open Government. It's going to be held December 16th. Registration is required. Let me know if you have any questions or issues registering. I'm happy to announce that we were able to help Rabbi Shemtov connect with DOT and get the menorah installed in time for the Hanukkah lighting. I also want to thank the council member's office for helping as well. I know this was kind of an 11th hour path that the menorah wouldn't have the correct permits, but we got everything straightened out and the event was great. The 50th precinct informed us that they will be hosting a Toys for Tots on December 21st. Gifts can be dropped off to the precinct. We sent out a flyer, but let me know if you have any other questions on that. And just a reminder, now that we are required to post resolutions, any documents to be discussed at a meeting 24 hours in advance, please make sure to send us your agendas in advance, resolutions, any documentation, because it does take some time for us to format it and get it on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Okay, we'll move on to committee resolutions.
I
do
do have a
see two
question.
hands.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I see Dan and David. Dan, go ahead.
So Kira, you were saying Rabbi Shemtov had contacted us to get the proper permits. Is that not a SAPO permit that he normally does on an annual
Yeah, I'm
basis?
sorry. We approved the SAPO permit, but he was having some bureaucratic issues getting the crane permit in time from
The
the city.
crane permit.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
This was
we did our
all
job
about
with
the crane,
SAPO, but
which
there was
costs a lot
issues
of
with the
money.
crane.
Yeah. Gotcha. So the crane permit that they needed.
Yes. It was a lot of back and forth, because this year was different, something to do with that crane, and they needed a permit. They didn't have it. It's very expensive. There were a lot of issues involved, a lot of emails about this. So it was a Hanukkah miracle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
thank
thank
God we got it because the crane is a heavy lift.
Oh, man.
Very good. David, David?
Oh, sorry. I was so taken aback by Sergio's cleverness there. That was pretty cool. And yeah, and I think that Eric, I saw Dio and Eric there at the lighting, and I think Eric Dinowitz had trouble fighting off his twins who wanted to go up in the bucket with him for the actual lighting. I do have a serious question. Yeah, I asked this question a year ago and a month ago, and we're now halfway through the fiscal year, and we still haven't had a newsletter. This strongly suggests that a decision was made somewhere to kill the newsletter.
David, I can answer this, and I should have mentioned it in my report.
Okay.
There will be newsletters again in the new year. I've spoken to Laura about it. There was no decision. This is totally on me. After the summer newsletter went out, September rolled around, completely didn't think about it. And now we've just kind of been swamped beyond belief, but there will be a newsletter in the beginning of the year.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
Rosemary.
And if you have any content, please forward to me. A lot of times the city sends us things literally the day before they happen.
Right.
So if you see anything, anybody wants to share in the newsletter, please forward to us.
I would, opt for basically cutting and pasting everything, well, not everything, but much of what you send out via Facebook and Twitter. And, don't reinvent the wheel. What you've done in years gone by is fine. So,
Thank you.
I'd hate to see a lot of time spent on this. Hopefully you will be able to cut and paste from existing stuff. But thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Thanks, David.
Rosemary.
Hi, this is for Kira and Laura. I'm sure you've done this already, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning with all the stuff that you've had on your back with the virus and the closing the office and the floods and everything. Just maybe a reminder, and maybe you've done it already. I'm sure you did, but when it comes around to Thanksgiving and the holiday season, Christmas, New Year's, we have usually called our homeless shelter, where our families are kept, and asked them, is there anything we can do for them? Is there any assistance? Are they looking for volunteers? We've kind of asked that, and it many times they don't, they're fine, but it deserves in this season, and especially with what is going on in our community, and just an outreach to say, is there something that we can contribute to your life in that shelter? Okay?
Thank you, Rosemary.
Okay.
Most definitely. That's a good reminder. Thank you.
Let's see. I don't see any other hands. So we'll move on to committee resolutions.
Okay. Let's see, public safety, I'll pull up first. Give me a second. Okay.
Okay, hi, everybody. The Public Safety Committee, we had two resolutions, one for renewal and one for a new application SLAs. The renewal was for the barbecue pit located at 5788 Marshallou Avenue. And the 50th said they were unaware of any notable disturbances or complaints about the establishment. And our committee approved the renewal unanimously. It was for wine, beer, and cider. And we also had a new application for Izili Luxury Hall Corp., which is going to be located at 5540 Broadway. And they applied for a new liquor license. We had them sign a 2 a.m. agreement, agreeing to close the business down by 2 a.m. every day during their first year of operation. The 50th said the area had no problems before where they're going to go into. The business is going to be a catering business, and they said their hours of operation are basically going to be between 7 and 10 and 8 to 12 with kids parties in the afternoon. And, you know, when asked, the owners have no other establishments, and they have experience in other catering places, but they don't own any other businesses. There's going to be no live entertainment there. So we, and the capacity for the place is about 74 people. So, you know, we had no reason to do anything but approve this unanimously, and we cross our fingers with that one.
Is it adjacent to Staples?
5440.
No, 5540.
5540, I'm sorry. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, David.
No, it's not.
think
I'm
it's
looking
on
at it
the
right
other
now out of
strip.
curiosity.
It's on the other strip.
Could you
Isn't that
describe
by-
it? Could you describe it for us where it is, please?
It looks like it's across the street from Land and Sea.
Right.
I think it's directly on Broadway.
It where the Starbucks is, it's across that little, well, it's right across, adjacent actually to where the Starbucks is, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good.
In that relatively new mall?
Correct. Well, not in the mall, but
It's
on that strip.
adjacent to the mall.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of near where the Oshkosh B'gosh visitor was, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's all I got.
Okay, that's
It's where
good.
Petland Discounts was.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it. Got it. Okay,
you.
if there are no questions for Ed, we can move on. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, I think I have TNT next.
Maybe, Akira, we can start with the Stevenson one, since there's probably less discussion about that. I want to make sure I got plenty of room, plenty of time for you, Rosemary. So
Can you see it? I had to zoom out, but is it?
I can see it.
I
Okay.
can't. Can you zoom in?
I can also read it if that's helpful. So the history of this is that this was approved in June at the last TNT meeting, but it only had a therefore be it resolved. And so I just wanted to put in some whereases just so we had some context for the record. And so I did that and then just brought it back to the committee. So the committee and just read it to the committee. And then I thought I would just bring it to, we'll finish it up. Whereas Stevenson Place is a narrow residential one-way street that runs in a U shape from Sedgwick Avenue to Sedgwick Avenue. Whereas Stevenson Place is bounded for most of its length on the south by the historic retaining wall of Fort Independence Park. Whereas the south side of Stevenson Place along the retaining wall currently has a no parking anytime zone along the length of the street adjacent to the Fort Independence Park retaining wall. Whereas there is an ongoing issue of vehicles with placards parking in the zone, which narrows access to the roadway. Whereas the committee heard testimony that the roadway access must be kept clear for emergency vehicles and for residents to travel to their homes. And whereas there is a senior center and Jewish center on this block. And then therefore be it resolved, the Traffic and Transportation Committee of Bronx Community Board 8 requests the New York City Department of Transportation change the parking regulation for the south side of Stevenson Place along the retaining wall for 4 Independence Park to a no standing zone to eliminate the parking of any vehicles. So, any questions? or
Yeah, I
changes
would
or-
like to ask a question. I'm not a member of the TNT, but I'm down as having voted yes for this.
Yeah, this is because this was actually done in June. So this was back when you were a member. It's also
I
Dan, you'll
see.
see Dan Patternak's on it. I did also correct the spelling of your name, Sylvia. I'm sorry about that.
It's with a
Um,
Y, yeah.
with the Y. But yeah, this was back from June when
I see.
Dan was still the chair.
Okay.
David, your hand is up. Is that from before?
Yeah, just simple. The Jewish Center is not a synagogue. It's just a community center, right?
It's I think it's kind of a synagogue on the back. I mean, it's got the.
It is
you know,
a
it's-
synagogue.
It's got the, yeah, there's been.
Oh,
David,
okay, okay,
It is a synagogue.
okay.
Do you want me to change it to synagogue?
No, Jewish Center generally does apply to
synagogue.
some level of a synagogue, but if it were a community center, I would have said senior and Jewish community centers. But apparently this is accurate as is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dan and then Ed. Dan.
Just one note, Deb, I see that you have an absent down there.
Yeah, I wasn't on the call at this time. It's also kind of why I wanted to make sure the whereases were there. And
No,
double check it
I
back
guess
to
the point
committee.
is you weren't the only person absent, and I know most of us normally don't put in like who's absent
Present.
on those.
Mhm. I only put
It's a
I only
procedural
put
one when
myself.
it goes to the board.
I only put the absence on there because I was at the meeting as a whole, but I wasn't on this vote. And so I thought that because the minutes reflected me being at this meeting in June, that I wanted it to be clear why I wasn't on the vote. That was the only reason for putting myself down. I've been kind of trying to do that if there is a vote where some specific person is missing from that vote. So that was really just a point of clarity. Because I was at the June meeting, but I arrived when we were talking about Fort Independence, which was about maybe probably about 5 or 10 minutes after this.
So just to be clear, the committee voted on this again?
No, the committee, I just read the whereases because I didn't touch the therefore be it resolved. So that the resolution as it stands was the same. And so I added the whereases and just that seemed like that was appropriate. You can tell me if you think that that's not appropriate and I can go back and have the committee vote again, but.
I think if you add something to a resolution that was passed, it's a new resolution.
I agree with Sergio on that.
Just, that, I mean, it seems like an unobjectionable resolution that uncontroversial, but it seems like a new resolution. If we're creating a new product and then we have to go through who was there and who wasn't there back in June.
Okay. I mean, that's
I
fine.
think
I
it
can
would
take
have
it back to the
been, it would have
committee
been
and
voted
vote
on
again.
at your last meeting, Deb. Did you tell me that this was
No.
at the end and people left, so you didn't have a quorum and that's what happened?
Well, we weren't planning on voting on it because I'm sorry for that. That's my error. There wasn't a quorum anyway, so we wouldn't have been able to vote on it. But I hadn't also been planning on it because it was already passed. But I
if
can
it-
totally take it back to that's fine. I can take it back to the committee and we can just vote on it at the next one. I mean, to your point, it's pretty, it's not, particularly controversial.
Right, or if the committee's in general agreement with it, even if it's presented from the floor as a new resolution, it's something different.
Right, we just simply didn't have a quorum when I presented at the end of the meeting this month, so I couldn't even say that it's by acclamation or anything.
Right.
So Deb,
Okay.
I would suggest a whereas stating the previous action, a whereas stating the reason for the new action, and the resolution being the new action. That would be a very simple resolution. And in the first whereas, you would refer to the previous resolution. So just 3 lines, that's it, very simple.
What? You're saying a different resolution or?
No, if you were going to modify, if you were going to start from scratch, you wouldn't have to start from scratch. You would always reference the previous resolution if you were going to bring this back and modify, make a new resolution. You would have to reference the previous action taken.
Right.
That
But
it was-
since
that-
it
the
only,
June
since the
action.
previous action was taken in committee, I have to go back for a vote anyway. I might as well just go back and have the committee vote on the whole thing, right?
Completely starting from scratch with them. Well, I was just suggesting you can save some time in your resolution by condensing what was considered
Oh, you mean
by
not have so
previous-
many not have so many
Yeah,
whereas?
Exactly.
Oh, I
what
see.
was previously considered and or adopted
previously
by a
existed?
previous incarnation of the committee. Yeah.
I see Ed. Ed, is it from before or?
No, yeah, I agree with all these whereas clauses, and we discussed this in committee. It's just a procedural aspect of it. Like Sergio said, anytime anything is added afterwards, I mean, this one is fine, but it just sets up the potential for something to be taken out of context or presented in somewhat of a different way. So just for procedure, for the procedural aspect of it. And I don't know if there's any way in the essence of time to maybe perhaps present this at the full board with an explanation to vote on it then,
Right, that's what I was saying, Deb. If your committee's not, if it's not objectionable to your committee, just present something from the floor, unless, you feel you get the sense of your committee that they want to discuss it some more.
Okay, yeah, I don't think the committee would need to discuss this anymore. I don't think that this was controversial in any way, or is controversial now.
I don't either, but somebody could raise an objection from the floor if they had one at the board meeting.
Okay. So then, do I need to change anything else on it if I wanted to raise it from the floor?
I would just say what Bob Fanuzzi said is actually make a reference to the fact that we made a change from the initial resolution and what it was, just some type of reference added to that, so everything's put in its proper context.
Okay.
You're raising a very important issue for all of you. And the question is, when a committee has voted an idea, a theory, or whatever, and allow the chair to make some modification to the resolution before it hits the floor, does the chair have to go back? And we've done it with land use many times, where so long as the committee voted in theory what the resolution was about, and Chuck has done a great job in putting the whereases together, the resolution still stood. So if this resolution represents the will of the committee at the time the vote was taken, the fact that you add the whereases and the committee in public doesn't complain, this can go forward.
Agreed.
Okay, so it goes forward at the full board.
But doesn't it cause a problem because it is technically a different committee? The composition is different, so the people who voted on this are no longer necessarily the people who are on the current committee. So isn't it a bit misleading in that sense?
I think though that this might, to what Ed was just talking about, that this actually makes even more sense to have it come from the floor, because it has people who used to be on the committee but who are still on the board who could then raise any objections if they have them.
Correct.
So that it makes more sense to have everybody in the room than to have the new committee vote on something that the old committee already passed.
That's an important thought.
Deb, what happened with the previous version? Did it go to the full board?
No, the previous version was approved in June, and I noticed it in the June minutes kind of later and towards the end of the year, and then it got bumped from September just because there was so much going on at the September meeting.
Okay, so it's never been voted on by the board?
No.
Okay.
Right, so it hasn't gone anywhere yet. It
No,
hasn't
it
left
hasn't.
the nest. It hasn't left.
It hasn't left the incubator.
Right. Boy, this has been a big circle. Bob.
I try to make every mistake at least once so that I know so many things.
Welcome to my world.
Okay, so I'll add another whereas and then bring it back to the full board, if that makes sense.
Dan.
Yeah, I don't think, as far as the resolution, we accept friendly amendments. Chairs accept friendly amendments all the time. And, part of the thing that we do here at exec is kind of talk about resolutions. I think it's fine to go to the full board. You had a be it resolved that was passed by the committee in June. You take it to the full board, you say it's an amended resolution. Chairs accepted these friendly amendments. You're seeking now board approval for it. I believe it was unanimous. I don't think it's a very, what was I going to say, controversial issue. but I don't think there's any reason to bring it back to the committee at this point and waste time. I think you're fine just taking it to the full board.
Good. Okay, I don't see any other hands on this, so we will proceed. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Good
thank you.
feedback.
All right. And speaking of doing things again, so this one is this is about the Independence Avenue flexible delineators. And I guess I can start by just reading it, and hopefully that the whereases give enough context. And if they don't, then that's where probably it would be best to have just fresh ears of like where there should be tweaks. Whereas in the fall of 2020 and early winter of 2021, the Traffic and Transportation Committee of Community Board 8 held several public discussions on ways to reduce drag racing on Independence Avenue. Whereas the majority of the community expressed strong opposition to general common traffic calming measures on Independence Avenue, such as lane narrowing, pedestrian extensions, bike lanes, additional traffic lights, and the completion of sidewalks. Whereas the March 2020 Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting, whereas during the March 2020 Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting, committee members and the general public discussed the placement of flexible delineators and channelization at each impacted intersection to identify locations that would best reduce the intersection size while also addressing concerns with parking, pedestrian crossings, bus stops, and garbage pickup. Whereas in April of 2021, Community Board 8 passed a resolution to recommend New York City DOT install flexible delineators and rubber speed bumps on Independence Avenue at the intersections of West 235th Street, West 236th Street, West 237th Street, West 239th Street, and West 240th Street to reduce reckless donuts by vehicles. Whereas the Bronx DOT office has informed the Traffic and Transportation Committee that specific treatments cannot be requested and that the agency does not have a policy of reducing intersection radius to restrict illegal vehicular activity like donuts. Whereas the April 2021 resolution is not actionable by the New York City Department of Transportation as it is currently written. Therefore, be it resolved that the Traffic and Transportation Committee of Bronx Community Board 8 requests that Community Board 8 rescind the resolution of April 2021 requesting flexible delineators and channelization on Independence Avenue. And was unanimously approved.
Comments? Dan? Dan?
The hand was up from before. I mean, I do have some comments on this, but the hand was up from before. I'll say, yeah, go ahead. You can go to somebody else and I'll come back.
Rosemary? And then David, then Dan? Okay.
Okay, I'm up. Laura, you called on me, yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'll say something, I'll say a number of things that Deborah has heard me say at least one, if not both of her meetings on this topic. I have a problem with the rescission. I have a problem with the rescission of a resolution duly adopted by the T&T Committee and the Community Board. I have a problem with that, especially after 8 months. This was approved in April. We're now in December. I have listened carefully for reasons why there should be a rescission. And I may have missed some of them, but this is what I have heard. In the resolution says it's not actionable. Our resolution is not actionable. Well, yes, it is. DOT can say, we looked at your resolution and we disagree with it and we're not going to act on it. That's actionable. You don't rescind something because, well, of course it's actionable on DOT's part. Then I've heard, well, it's in the resolution that DOT does not have a policy for donuts. Well, they should. Okay, they say they don't, but they should. And we see it through the city where there have been, and I hate to use the term terrorist attacks with vans and trucks and everything. DOT is in there with things that block traffic, okay? They do have the ability to address issues such as this. So They say they do not have a policy for donuts. Fine, but they should. Next, I have heard if we give it to DOT, they can study and do whatever they want to do. And we've heard this before, and because we've lived it before. We do not want another Palisade K-Pop. And that actually is music to my ears. We don't need another Palisade K-Pop. I hope that becomes Remember the Alamo for this community with DOT. If
You're not just quoting the Alamo because I'm a Travis, right, Rosemary?
I have that was lost on me. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So it's not actionable. DOT does not have a policy for donuts. If we give to DOT, they can do whatever they want. We don't want another Palisade K-Pop. That feels like extortion and intimidation. I mean, do we not propose something to DOT because they can use it against us? That is not the position we should be in. Rescinding the resolution cleans the slate of a committee and a community board position. It cleans the slate. And if you read a TNT agenda, in the TNT agenda, it says the committee will be accepting proposals for Independence Avenue intersections that should be studied for pedestrian safety to be discussed at a future meeting. All fine, but that is in defiance of the reason to rescind. You rescind because whatever you give DOT, they can do whatever they want. Then why in the exact same agenda are you proposing? We're going to come up with things to give to DOT. It is, the thing to me is we're not dealing with the real issue. We're not dealing with the real issue, but I believe there's no reason to rescind the TNT and community board voted resolution. No reason to rescind it. Let the community board position stand. It was voted on. And by the way, I abstained on it, okay? I wasn't in favor of it, but let it stand as a community board position. Whatever DOT wants to respond, let them respond. Let them say, oh, this is not actionable. Let them say, we do not do things to stop donuts. Or let them say, we'll do whatever we want to do. Let them say that. But to rescind is to leave zero there, zero voice of our community, which spoke for a moment, may go no place, but it should stand and not be rescinded. Thank you.
So Rosemary, what I hear you that it's, what I'm hearing at least is that it's important for the community board to have a response. And I agree. I think the worry I had with this is that, and maybe I should use, like they see that like does not have a policy. It's not exactly right. They don't have a treatment that is specific for donuts. And so my concern is that they will, what we're basically telling them with the current resolution that stands is like, if we follow what your logic, I think is that we would want them to proceed with it. But what it does is it says to DOT, here are multiple intersections that we have a problem with, and that normally we would say to them, like if we thought we had a pedestrian intersection or a pedestrian safety problem at an intersection, like say Johnson and Kapok, we said, okay, we definitely have a pedestrian safety issue, and they have specific treatments that they say, okay, well, here are a selection of things. This is what our toolbox looks like to address that. And then when we're discussing it in committee, we say, okay, those things seem reasonable for the problem that we want to address. Please conduct a study, and knowing that that's kind of what their toolbox looks like. When they don't have a toolbox of specific things, then it opens it up to being much more broad. And I think that was my worry, is that we name specific intersections and we say there's a problem and that there's almost no limit to what they can study based on kind of the way it's set up right now. That the one thing I know is that they may put flexible delineators and channelization, or they may not, but they would kind of, our requesting the flexible delineators and channelization doesn't limit them in the way that we had hoped it would. I think, you know, when we worked with the community with this, we said to them, this is really what we're asking for, and you can trust us, this is all they'll do. And it just, in following up and talking to them and like kind of getting a sense of what they, like how they were going to approach this, it just seemed to me like it was going to be a very wide interpretation, and would have, you know, I mean, what you called on before and what you were concerned on during the Independence Avenue calls, which were that kind of unforeseen circumstances that think like there would be individual studies of each of these intersections. And so that was why I wanted to rescind. And that's why the committee voted to rescind, was to say to DOT, we don't want to give you carte blanche and call your attention to all of these specific intersections.
Any other, thank you. Who's next? David Gelman and then Dan?
Yeah, just simply, I was not present for the vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David, I removed you. I will remove you.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, a few points here. First, it's my understanding, and Deb had, you know, stated this at the traffic meeting, that, you know, these points from DOT came in a conversation and not in any writing. And if DOT, 8 months after the fact, is stating to our community board that they're asking us, you know, for a rescission of our resolution for the reasons stated by Deb, then that should be in an email, especially if we're acting upon that. Second, what was stated, let me finish, and then
Okay.
Laura can call on whoever Laura wants to call on. Second, it was also stated that DOT did not quote unquote log in our resolution after this 8-month period. I would also like that in writing from DOT to state that they've not yet logged in our resolution after this amount of time. And I think it's important for transparency's sake of agencies that we get that in writing from DOT. Regarding the rescission, I have serious trouble rescinding a resolution of this board, especially based upon the amount of hours and time that the community spent, this board spent, the committee spent, and leaving essentially a void. Now, Rosemary made a point about cleaning the slates. And you know, I really didn't notice it on the agenda, but to say we're going to accept new ideas to move forward with it, it is nonsensical. For me, I see a void created. The community came to us with an issue. We discussed it. We came forward with a very specific plan, and now we're leaving a void here. If we want to say to DOT to do nothing here, then we should affirmatively state that to DOT for whatever reasons we have to do nothing. We should not do a rescission. We need something to replace this, to say to DOT, we submitted this resolution, but we don't want you to act on it because of A, B, C, because we think you're going to do something else. Next, regarding the studies, we didn't ask for a study. We asked for very specific treatments from DOT. We told DOT at the end of that resolution that whatever they come to do, whatever their plan is based upon what we're asking them to do, to come to us first before they do anything. Now, if DOT wants to turn to our community board and say, we don't have this treatment, which I'll get to in a moment, and we're going to require a study, then they should say that to us. If DOT doesn't want to do what we've asked them, they should say that to us in writing. We don't want to do this. We do not have treatments for donuts in our toolkit. They should say that in writing. Quite frankly, I don't believe it. Regarding what we did ask them to do, what we asked them to do through most of these intersections are slow wedge turning treatments. to narrow the intersection. They do them across the city. They do them all across the city and have been doing them for a number of years right now. To turn to us, to our community board and saying, we don't have any specific treatment for stunt driving, so we can't put in slow wedge turn treatments here is just so completely disingenuous to me. Completely. I am wholeheartedly 1000% against rescinding and this resolution that was put forward here. And I'll speak to it at the board and I make my points now so that way everybody knows where I stand on this. Thank you. And I really don't need a response. It's just where I am. And I give everybody, you know, the heads up of where I am. And I hope you look into this further. Thank you.
So just to respond, I just want to clarify one piece.
Point of order. Laura, are you calling on someone?
Of course, Deb will respond if she'd like to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I just wanted to respond that I don't think it's necessary to get into a confrontational relationship with DOT all the time. That I do think that when I listened to them about how they proceed, it was just simply that we couldn't ask for specific treatments and with a 100% guarantee that that's what we would get, because they're professional civil engineers and they want to have specific problems called out to them, but that then they would study them. And so I just felt as though this would bring a great deal of risk if we just highlighted this and that to DOT. So it was really to avoid issues coming up again in the future and kind of opening up Independence Avenue in a way that I thought would be very fractious and very difficult for the people who live in that community. So that's all.
Ed, and then Bob Bender.
Deb pretty much touched on most of the points, and I do agree with rescinding this, and I voted on it, and I still agree with it. And it just seems, Novardo has gone on record as basically telling us that a request like this could open up a can of worms, and they can pretty much do whatever they want to do. So, and the fact, I agree with some of Dan's points too, though, about having some of this stuff, especially like them not logging it in for 8 months. We should get some of this in writing if possible. But them not logging it in even makes me think it's, better to rescind it now, since they haven't put it on record as they're going to do anything and going forward with any of this. So, and the other possibility is what Dan mentioned also, if not rescind it, then say, have a new resolution stating that we don't want anything done, period. But just from listening to you, Deb, I think you're looking for different solutions rather than just nothing. So that's something that, but we would be back in the same situation with anything we proposed regarding Independence Avenue. If we propose something new, then we're back where we are now, that they can basically do anything they want. So I think we have to be very careful with that as well. But I stand by this, and as things stand now, I still stick by this resolution.
Thank you, Ed. Bob Bender, and then Sylvia.
Yeah, what I want to say is very similar to what Ed has just said. Deb, your concern here is that they're not going to put in these delineators, but they might do something else. And we don't know what that something else is. And there's a concern that it's going to be something that the community wouldn't want, the people living there wouldn't want. My suggestion is to reword this resolution so that it says, if you're confident that you have DOT's position accurate in this resolution as it is now, that they're not going to install the delineators, that they don't do that, I think you should add a whereas clause that to the effect that if DOT proposes to address this issue in some other way, you ask that they come back to the community board or come back to the committee to discuss that issue before proceeding. That I think would address the concern that you've raised, and I think would also address the concern about what's you know, what's the reason for rescinding the resolution? You wouldn't so much be rescinding the resolution as you would be passing a new resolution that would supersede the resolution that had passed before, in the sense that it would say, based on new information, that DOT will not do what you requested in that resolution. You simply ask that they not do anything until they come back before the committee to explain to the committee what they want to do. So that's my suggestion.
The nuance of it, Bob, and I'm trying to think about how to state this, is that they haven't said that they would not do flexible delineators or channelization. They just haven't committed to only doing flexible delineators and channelization. And that it's the specific treatment and placement of those delineators, which they cannot commit to doing because they would want to do a study. And my concern is that anytime we raise something with them to do a study, which is kind of their, you know, what they would do in this case is they would do a study of these intersections, that whatever they come back to us with, we can't stop it once they've done the study. That is what will happen. And so it would be just as likely that they might choose to put like a curbing or something like that, curb like bump outs, like that they would expand or even reduce parking in some areas to daylight, you know, so, but that we wouldn't have any way of really stopping that from happening once we had highlighted these intersections.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying there, but
Yeah.
if either the choice is we say to DOT, please don't do anything before coming back to discuss it with the committee, or else we simply render ourselves irrelevant by saying it doesn't really matter what we do, DOT is going to go ahead and do whatever they want to do. I want to believe that it's still worth taking a position with DOT, and it's still worth saying to DOT, we want you to come back and talk to us about what you're going to do before you do it. And that's the essence of what we're talking about here. Otherwise, we simply throw up our hands and say, well, it doesn't really matter what we do or what we say, DOT is going to do whatever they want. And I don't think that's, I don't think that advances the community's interest in any way.
So you're saying, but to have them come back without rescinding it, so that we're
the issue of rescinding it, I think is that's not my concern, whether it's rescinded, superseded, whatever it is. I don't want to. That to me is something of a semantic discussion. What I want to do here is address the real concern, which is that DOT might take some action on this area without the participation of the community. And, accept the fact that we cannot specifically request the delineators, that's fine. So we simply ask that they come back to discuss with the committee how they will address the issue that has been raised before proceeding to do anything. That's all I'm suggesting.
So that would be a second, kind of a be it further resolved, if DOT chooses to address this issue?
Well, it could be a whereas clause too. I mean, there are different ways in which you can do this. If you want to have a discussion offline after the meeting about rewording the resolution, I'd be happy to continue the conversation with you then.
Okay. Because I think it's dangerous to point them in the direction of, like, if we of those intersections, I think we've gotten really lucky that they hadn't logged it over the summer, and so I just hesitate to encourage them to think about how to solve this problem, even if it does involve coming back to the committee after they've done that, because they will kind of continue to do whatever they've decided to do.
Well, I don't think we're going to be either encouraging them or discouraging them. We're simply going to be asking them not to take action without discussing it with the committee. I mean, if they're hell-bent on doing something, regardless of what we think, we can't stop them. But I think the important thing here is to express a point of view that, the committee and the community are entitled to have some discussion with DOT about how to solve this problem before DOT decides to go ahead. As everybody has said, we don't want to find out that we're in another situation of KPOC and Palisade where they go off on their own and then everybody's aggrieved afterwards.
Sylvia and then Bob Fanuzzi.
I'm coming in from a different place. The thing that bothers me is that I was on the committee when I voted for this, for the linears. We spent hours and hours of community people coming and giving their opinion. We changed the intersections a half a dozen times. On 240th Street, they were upset because we were taking in a driveway and I think there was a pump, and we changed that to their satisfaction. And we all voted for it. Then it went to the board and it was voted on the board. Now we stand here and we're repealing something. We're not involving the community. We're going to have a hodgepodge from DOT. DOT should have been at the last meeting so we could have discussed this with them. We're talking amongst ourselves. We don't know what where they're coming from. And I, for one, having been on the board for 13 years, I have never been asked to, and also it's a new committee. It's now a new TNT committee. It's not even the old people that voted for this. And I think that I agree mostly with Dan, because he says that we should look at it, either have a new resolution or something else. I mean, in midstream, just to say, well, we're going to repeal it and DOT should do what we want and we don't want to ruffle their feathers. I think that's not really going in the right direction to get what we want.
Thank you, Sylvia. Bob Fanuzzi, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you. Deb, there are two features called for from March 2020, flexible delineators and channelization. Are those measures now deemed undesirable by either the committee, the community, or circumstances? Do you still want flexible delineators?
Yeah, we would love to have them put flexible delineators and channelization in those intersections. I think that's still considered the goal.
So I'm a little, so then if you still want it and the resolution from April wants it, then you don't want to rescind a resolution that proposes something you want. I think I don't understand the gain from the community board if this are things that are desirable. It's one thing if they were no longer desirable or needed, but these are still good ideas. And it looks to me like you're trying to preempt a happening that hasn't happened yet. And you may want to wait until something undesirable is brought to you and then oppose that, rather than make a principle that is designed to preempt undesirable things that haven't been proposed yet. I just think that you are still, if you believe in what this resolution proposes, I think it's more important that the community board and the committee and the community reckon with the refusal, and I wouldn't use actionable because that's a legal term implying liability. I think the conversation here is that DOT won't do what we want. So now we should want it more.
Right.
In fact, is that fair? I mean, because what I hear is that if you still want it and they said no, then shouldn't you still want it and advocate strongly against them for those things.
I think that it depends on what kind of trouble you want to find yourself in potentially, right? That that DOT is not saying, no, we will not study this intersection, or no, we will not put flexible delineators and channelization in there if that's what we determine is needed. And there is always a possibility that we say to DOT, we want you to look at these intersections and make it harder for cars to do donuts. And they come back to us with these flexible delineators and channels and channelization. I mean, we did work with Novardo when we were putting the stuff together, but I do think he was doing us a favor when he said, listen, when you submit this, the thing you're asking for may not be what you get exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and that the problem of DOT, and he said the follow part of it, which is that once we've studied something, then that's what we do. And so this is kind of the last point where we can decide whether we want to take that journey with them and have them do something which will hopefully reduce the donuts, but may also just cause treatments and things to be done on each of these intersections that are not flexible delineators and channelization. That is more curb cuts and things like that.
Yeah, I think that can be said about a lot of invitations for city agencies to solve local problems.
Yeah,
they're going to give you an enchilada, and you may not like all of the enchilada, and you fight that battle when they serve you the enchilada or when they present you the enchilada. But I wouldn't cut out the vital ingredients that the community board and the committee already thinks, and the community, more importantly, feels will help the donut problem and the speed problem. I don't see the gain in ruling out what everybody agrees could be desirable.
The only concern is really just simply opening us up to.
And Deb, like I said, that could happen whenever you make a recommendation. They'll always do more or less. And it's up to us to take responsibility for pursuing what we want. But we bought this, okay? We want a traffic study, and we need a traffic study, and this area needs help. So you were very specific, wisely, you scoped it. And just to let you know, this resolution keeps the community board on the straight and narrow in terms of scoping the solution. We're not freelancing here, and we don't need and want the enchilada. We want X, Y, Z. We want these three things, right? And the donut, reducing. So I've never heard, I don't think anything said or agreed upon is wrong. If there was a resolution that was out of order or improper or bad information or outdated information, then maybe you actually issue a correction or a new resolution. But I'm feeling if these are still good things and we still believe in it and we're afraid of what they'll do with it, we deal with the fear head on and say, don't do anything more. Don't even think about it, because we'll come down on you with community opposition like you won't believe. We asked for 3 things, not 8. That's just my advice how I would handle it. But Deb, you're the chair. You have to make this call.
Well, I think this is in the hand of the board at this point.
Marty?
Yes, I think a lot of important things have been said, and there are 2 issues here. Issue number 1 is, can we take this resolution back? And I think that's no big problem, but the bigger problem is we're playing chess, and I think we're playing a losing hand. And what is being presented here says we're clearing the slate. You're on your own. Now, I admit I have a major prejudice against traffic DOT because I'm still waiting for the return of the letter I was promised by Navarro. And that was what, 5-6 months ago, based on the letter I sent a year ago, which he promised he would respond. So I think a substitute resolution ought to turn us the other side around. And whereas DOT has not responded to our previous resolution, Therefore, we call upon them to come to us with alternate suggestions and explanation as to why they're not moved on it. That's a suggestion, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Marty. Rosemary?
Oh, okay, am I on? I'm on, right? You can hear me. I never disagree with Bob Bender, but there was one thing he said I do disagree with. It does make sense to rescind this resolution. It does not make sense to rescind this resolution. It does not make sense to rescind it. It's a mistake to rescind it. The next thing Bob said, I completely agree with. It is the real issue, and what is important is that the community board takes a position. The community board takes a position. We took a position. If we do not like, as a community board, if we don't like that position, come up with something else. But to rescind and leave this abyss is a mistake. It's a mistake. It is not good to rescind the will of the community board. Okay, God knows I could go on forever. I apologize, I will stop. Thank you, Laura, thank you.
Thank you. Dan? I don't know if your hand is up from before, Dan?
Oh, no, it is. I'm sorry. I was on mute
Okay.
there. So I guess just two quick things. Sylvia had mentioned community and how many people came, before. Did we reach out to, that association group, the ones that were active last year, Jeff Merdler and crew? Because I remember them being a big part of this last year. And
So
was
I
thinking,
went and I posted notice on pretty much every post on Independence Avenue of this.
Yeah, fair enough. But the question, Laura, and I don't know if you or Kira did you guys reach out to Jeff Merdler and that group, the ones that were very active in this last year, to let them know about this?
We sent the agenda out to our co-op, like our business
Co-op
list.
Yeah.
So
And
Kira,
we made up flyers for Deb. I didn't send to Jeff Merdler individually.
that's my question, because I know he was representing a group of co-ops. So, again, being that they were very active in this, I think that they should be part of this conversation as well, given the amount of people that were coming out to those meetings. The second thing, and I guess obviously there's a huge issue with DOT. There always is. I faced this for 8 years and being the traffic chair. You never know what DOT is going to do, but that never stopped us from putting stuff forward that we really believed, especially something that we spent this much time on. And if DOT wants to reject it, they should, but we should take a position. If we want to tell them not to do this anymore, then we should do that. Let's take a position. We don't say rescind and then leave this confusing, vague, gray atmosphere of where we are. And what I really don't understand is, are we now going to ask DOT to come to us with solutions where they're going to say, well, this is what we're going to do? Are we presenting them with the problem that we faced and asking them to do something? We need to take a position one way or the next. And the truth is, if the board says, we don't want to do this anymore, we don't want delineators, we don't want slow wedge turn treatments, that's fine with me. But let's say something. Let's not sit here like a bunch of eunuchs, forgive me, and do nothing. Let's take a position.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think before this resolution goes to the board, we really need to let that group know what's going on here, because then we have a notice issue again. Thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quickly that I just think moving forward, given that we don't have much faith in DOT basically doing what the community wants and just imposing their will on us, like if we ask for something like this, there has to be some type of request or clause in some of these resolutions, like what was mentioned before, the DOT should come back and address the community and the community board about any proposed changes that we didn't ask for initially, since we know they're going to do it anyway, just to have some type of, so we can generate some type of debate in the community or discussion about these issues, rather than just have these things sprung on everybody as a, as a surprise, even though it's no surprise to us anymore. This is what they do. But the community is certainly surprised by it, because this isn't what they paid for, so to speak, when they came out to the meeting. So just moving forward, I think we just need to attach some type of disclaimer that DOT needs to come back and any proposed changes that they're doing outside of what we proposed needs to be discussed. That's it.
David, last word.
Okay, yes. I think it's important that we, keep in mind that we are dealing with agencies who are, and we're asking them to take action on our behalf. We approached DOT about this issue because it was a severe concern about the dangers that were coming from racing and donuts and whatnot on Independence Avenue. And when they came back to us with something that might inconvenience parking and whatnot, there was a strong reaction. And, I'm somewhat sympathetic to that reaction, but the bottom line is that we asked DOT to do something, and we need to work with our agencies, not against them, and not to criticize them only. I mean, for example, we have been highly successful with parks over the last 5 years because we've worked with them and we haven't called them idiots. And, this issue with DOT, people were scared. We asked them to do something. They did do something, and it might create inconveniences to protect public safety. Well, there are always trade-offs, but that's why they have traffic engineers and other engineers, working on our behalf. And so we have to, again, work with our agencies and not, point fingers at them constantly. And I think we have been doing that in this case.
Deb, is your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add
Yes.
one thing, just
Sure.
in response to, because I know, because what I hear also was folks just are worried about, like, kind of what is the next, like, what is the situation on Independence Avenue, or has the problem gone away, or like, what are we replacing this with? I thought maybe we could do a whereas 311 reports have dramatically been reduced since the reinstallation of speed bumps, street lines, and increased enforcement. Because that was one of the things that did come up when we discussed this in the committee level. We had Frederick from Assemblyman Dinowitz's office. We had some other folks from Independence, and then generally it was agreed that at present time the 311 reports, just the issue had kind of gone away, at least for the time being. And so maybe also making that clear in this would be helpful.
I definitely think that would be helpful. The board has not been getting complaints. I think the speed bumps, we haven't been getting complaints. So on the ground, conditions have improved on Independence Avenue, which is not to say it's gone. But I continue to hear that original message that we asked for delineators on these 5 intersections, and DOT said, well, you may not get them. You may get something else because we're going to study it. And so that goes back to what Ed was saying and others, that then we have no control, because once they come back and say, we have deemed this, this is a safety issue, whether they come back to the board and tell us, and we say to them, we don't want it, they'll do it anyway. That's the nature. It's not like the Parks Department, where we have input on the scoping and everything else from the get-go, and there's give and take and discussion, although we don't always get what we want, but it's a totally different thing with DOT. So, DOT didn't tell us to rescind it. What DOT said was that you may not get this, and you may not like what you get. So, this is difficult. As far as rescinding, the board has rescinded resolutions in the past. The one that comes to my mind is when TNT and Parks committees both passed a NIMTEC resolution. And then subsequently, in 2014, the board passed a different resolution that said this supersedes any resolution that went forward. So, I mean, it's not usual, but it has been done by the board. The fact is, you know, I guess this will continue to be debated. Deb, think as chair of that committee, think about all the things that have been said. You know, that's all I could say. I just like, you have to be careful what you wish for, because you might not get it. I think that's a true thing. I mean, this board has voted against things. The Broadway Bike Plan was practically unanimous. We got it anyway. Once they do a study and they feel that a big curb like Cape Park and Palisade may be more appropriate in this spot, then people might not like that. You know, we wanted delineators. So this is difficult. I could see, because conditions did change, that, you know, they want to take it back. After all, this is asking in one resolution, 5 intersections. This is huge. Whereas possibly they want to look at 1 intersection in the future or something. 5 intersections in one resolution. It could be very, very changing for Independence Avenue, depending on what they come up for. So that's my 2 cents. I see Dan's hand. Is that from before, Dan?
No, it's just one clarification. NIMTIC, and again, the difference, it wasn't a rescission. We superseded, and this, you know, the
We
clarification
superseded.
was made before. And when we superseded, we presented something new based upon certain reasons which were presented in that resolution. We did not leave a void. We did not leave an absence. We gave a position, and that's the difference.
Yeah, we worked hard on that. Yep.
So Deb, you want to think about this more? You think you want to go forward with it and just let it see where it falls at the full board?
I think this discussion has been helpful. I feel like we should just proceed with the committee was unanimous about it. The community that came out to the committee was pretty strongly in favor of it. And so I feel like it's worth it to go to the board. And then if folks, you know, vote it down, then that's fair. And we can, if we'll need to do some amendments or language tweaks, we can do that so that people are comfortable. I kind of trust in the process.
Would it be helpful if you said whereas the April 2021 resolution is not actionable, has not been acted upon?
Yeah.
Because there isn't, everything is action.
Okay.
Has not been acted upon by
has
the
not been
department.
acted upon. Okay. Or it is not actionable without broad interpretation. I thought was like one way of that's the concern, is that it would be broadly interpreted, but that's also
Right,
the
but
purpose
also
was to
wasn't-
make it that you can't rescind something that's been actioned. So
Yes, which is another thought. I mean, but that's
Right.
what Marty had said. It's
Right.
possible to do this because it hasn't been acted upon
right
on the
So-
previous. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Mark, can I
you
just
had
add
mentioned putting in, if you go forward with this, something about the fact that the
Bring it back to
situation
the
has
committee.
changed a little, has improved. So, I mean, that's important. Ed, is your hand up from before?
I just wanted to say, not only is it not actionable, but not logged either. It hasn't
It's
been,
not-
it hasn't been acted upon, and it hasn't been even logged by them. So that might be some language you want to add.
Right, well, the logging thing is separate. Yeah, I mean, and that will take more, that's a whole other conversation. But it's not, you know, pursuant right here, but that's a whole other conversation, which we will have. Okay, if there are no other hands.
So what I'm hearing is
For the rescission. No? Deb?
What?
One of them, it's one of the main points towards why we're rescinding it, because it hasn't been logged yet.
it hasn't been there's not been actions or logged on. So what I'm hearing is, one is a whereas to explain that the situation has changed, that the 311 reports have dramatically been reduced, to make it clear that that's why we're not offering another solution at this moment. 2, that the April resolution was not acted upon by a DOT. And then 3, that if DOT chooses to address this issue, that in the future, that we ask that they come back to the community. Those were the three that I heard. Okay.
Do we have actual numbers on 311 complaints?
I went and looked it up, and then I also asked Frederick on the call if they were getting them, because they'd been so involved with it before, and they said they were not.
But there's going to be actual numbers out there. Do we have them?
I don't have them off the top of my head, but I have them someplace.
But we're putting them in a resolution. So I would just like, for the full board to actually have numbers if we're putting this into a resolution as a fact.
And committee members voted for this and they don't have that information.
Well, they didn't vote on that resolution or that part of it because it wasn't in this when they voted.
Hey, Deb, just the third bullet point that you mentioned about,
We could just say, whereas complaints have dramatically reduced, that might make it easier.
Well, the community board hasn't gotten complaints in months.
Right, instead of 311.
We
reports,
haven't
could
gotten
say-
any, which doesn't mean 311 doesn't, board has not gotten any.
So I'll just say complaints.
No. Complaints to whom?
The board has not got complaints, and then Frederick.
And that's,
And everybody got complaints when this was very active.
Right.
Well, I think we could try, you should tighten that up and we'll do a little investigating there.
Okay.
We know that the board hasn't, but, ask the other officer, the officials. And certainly we could check with 311 and we should check with Jervis, with the captain.
Deb,
I mean,
also-
we should have a little bit of documentation there for sure. Yeah. Ed and Dan, are your hands up from before?
My hand is up from now.
Okay, Ed.
Just one of the, I think it was the last point that you were making about returning, DOT returning to the committee. I just think the language needs to be a little more specific. It sounded a little broad when you mentioned it, because what are they returning for? They're returning to inform us of specific changes that they're going to implement that weren't brought up by the committee in the resolution. Specific changes, because what are they coming back to us for? So I think that language needs to be very, very specific.
Well, actually, if it's rescinded, they're not coming back to look at this at all. I think that was the point of this. But, okay, I don't see any other hands. This has been a very interesting, good discussion. Bob Fanuzzi, is your
Yeah,
hand up
just-
again now?
Just, Deb, I wanted to know whether you would offer this as a replacement resolution. Because we did do that in 2014, rather than rescinding based on new information. Does that achieve the same goal? You want to call off the dogs at this point, right?
Right, so therefore be it resolved that the Traffic and Transportation Committee of Bronx Community Board 8 requests that the community board replace. I mean, we don't have anything to.
No, that you can say that this, whereas you want to say something to the effect, I want to look back at 2014 now, this supplants the resolution of 2021. It would have to be a reason to supplant.
There
Okay.
would be
Does the
another
committee-
action to.
does-
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Laura.
Does the committee want to continue to study this? And come back with recommendations to DOT? I mean,
Yeah,
you're trying to pull the
committees-
attention away from 5 intersections right now that could be
Okay.
studied by them, because they say, well, we don't know what we're going to do. We're going to study it because you're bringing it to our attention.
don't you bring that right back to the same place you're in right now?
Yep.
Which is the problem. We're not addressing the problem.
Well, the problem has
Is
improved.
DOT, because DOT is different than parks, because the people in parks are much more amenable to working with. the
Oh, yeah,
community
yeah.
board.
It's apples, oranges, yeah.
So the problem is DOT and we're not addressing the problem.
Well, except that in this case, DOT is the one that did us the favor of saying, listen, this may have unintended consequences.
No, they're doing themselves a favor.
So, well,
That's not
I
a
mean,
favor.
we could add a whereas that is that the part that we're replacing is that instead of doing this, that the committee will continue to monitor and will come up with solutions in the future if the need arises or something like that. So that's the action that's replacing this action. But otherwise, I feel like the resolution, a replacement resolution has to have a different action.
Yeah. Well, something,
Yeah,
you'd be inviting them back to start and solve the problem with you, but you're still going to be afraid of any action they take, Deb. So your committee did take a stand here with 3 ideas, and anytime you deal with an issue, they're going to want to do something because, they're being asked to deal with a traffic problem. So, and they're going to want to do it.
I think though that if we identify that the speed bumps, the street lining, and the increased enforcement has already solved this problem,
that would be the guts of the whereas, and then the resolve would be that this supplants, and that do you want to talk to them ever again about this issue? Do you want this on your agenda ever again? Because that would be kind of what you said before about coming back.
I would prefer not to have it on my agenda unless the problem comes back with these new treatments in place, right? They've already and by treatments, I mean the speed bumps, the street lines, and the enforcement. If those 3 things don't keep the problem at bay, and the community starts to receive a lot of complaints regarding this again, then we certainly should, return to this.
Yeah, okay. I still think you're trying to supplant based on new information rather than rescind. That's an important.
you're still rescind. You're still
No,
rescinding it
you're making a new decision based on new facts.
because
You're
you
not-
did send a resolution. You
No,
sent
you're
it.
making.
You can't undo it without.
Exactly. So there's no such thing as rescission. You want to supplant
Right.
rather than
Right.
because you can't pull it back. It's been sent.
Well, you can pull it back as long as they haven't actioned it. That's the
Well,
only
we
moment.
did it. It's our action. The point is that we acted. So that's all that matters here.
Well,
It doesn't
DOT
matter.
also didn't act. So
That's okay.
the committee can't pull it back on its own because the board has acted, but that the board could pull it back because DOT has not acted. That's
But that to me is like an email thing. I just think that I recommend a replacement resolution.
Yes.
A substitution resolution
Yes.
based on new information rather than a rescission, which I've
But
never heard of.
Yes.
well, the rescission is in the guide that we have, but what is this? We don't have a substitute action other than monitoring.
Well,
You would make that.
Deb, your substitute action is to ask DOT not to take any other action without coming back to the committee. And I agree that the ideal way to proceed, the ideal way to go forward is to supersede the previous resolution with
Follow
this new
2000.
resolution.
Exactly. Follow
That's exactly what we
2014.
did before, was supersede an older resolution.
Dan, Rosemary, we all did that. That was a good move because we had new information.
correct. Correct.
And it was a chance for the board to affirm a positive step based on new information. Deb, this is the first
Correct.
time that you buried the lead here because it's been a success. The point here is that the interventions already undertaken succeeded until this point. But that's fantastic news, and that's new information that we can use to reach a new conclusion. So that really needs to be front and center in these whereas to give the board permission to revoke its previous proposal. And once they know that, they'll say, okay, problem solved for now, but problem solved.
So therefore, be it resolved that the Traffic and Transportation Committee requests that the DOT no longer study.
That resolve
these-
that is exactly what Bob Bender said, that this resolve that this constitute that this supersedes. Look at the language from 2014. I forget how we did it.
Yeah, the first be it resolved was that it superseded.
Yeah, it was two resolved.
Right, but we still need we just need to therefore be it resolved. That's all. Like, I don't know what it is, like,
Well, and your
that-
committee will tell you.
no, but we should just come up with that language now,
No,
or.
we who?
I need to come up with this language before the board meeting.
All right,
Jen?
I have that. Therefore, be it resolved that this
Why?
resolution supersedes the May 2012 resolution of Community Board 8 regarding the Hudson River Greenway. So this is regarding Independence Avenue.
Right, but then what's
That was a big, and then there was another.
And-
big one.
And what you want to do, Deb, is add a whereas clause that says what you said tonight about the situation having changed
Right.
in response to,
Yeah, that's the most
you know,
important thing.
in response to all the committee meetings and previous hearings you had on this subject.
Yeah,
And that gives you the reason why you're making this change.
right.
But then what is the therefore be it resolved? That's the part I don't
That the
understand.
community, that TNT do, I'm sorry, transportation do nothing without consulting the community board on this area. Exactly what Bob said before.
Okay. Well, that they do not implement any changes without
Or-
coming
yeah,
back to the committee.
Or approve any plans without coming back to the committee.
Okay,
And that achieves what you want, which is community engagement.
right.
And it doesn't make us look like we made a boo-boo.
Wow. People don't care about
But
our
there-
boo-boos. People don't
but-
care
but
about our boo-boos until there's curbing in the middle of Independence Avenue. So
Well,
I don't want,
but there were still, like I said, there is still good ideas. There's nothing here that's objectionable.
Exactly.
So don't make it a rescission. We made a boo-boo if you didn't make a boo-boo. There's no reason to put the blame on you by rescinding an approval, because nothing here is wrong.
well,
It may be rendered superfluous now, but nothing we did is wrong. So out of an abundance of caution, you're going to say, because of new information, new results, new interventions not included in this resolution, we don't want any further action. And that this proposal now, like we said before in 2014, supersedes the resolution of April 2021. That covers it.
okay. So so I have 4 changes to make then. One, adding the whereas that says it supersedes. One, adding a whereas that says the complaints have dramatically been reduced because of these 3 treatments. One, saying a whereas that the resolution has not been acted upon by DOT, and then a therefore be it resolved that DOT do nothing without coming back to the committee.
Yeah. And this way you don't act like the committee made a mistake. Like never get a black eye where you didn't need to give yourself one. This is, we didn't make an error.
Okay.
All right, everybody has spoken several times. Can we move on to the next one?
No.
Just no,
No.
yeah.
Please, please.
Okay, so we have Rosemary and Dan. Go ahead.
Good. Okay, my final I'm gonna end where I started. Rescission is a mistake. If there is to be a substitute resolution or another action, that is great. I wouldn't step on the toes of the TNT committee or the community board in doing that. But it should go through the committee and the community board, because this resolution went through the committee and is anticipating a vote of the community board. To change it significantly should go back. For me, it's a minor procedural point. The most important thing is rescission was a mistake. Thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, I'm glad we're back on track of actually making a statement to the agency and that it's going to be a supersede rather than a rescission. And look, this has changed dramatically. And right now, for 2 reasons, it should go back to the committee. First, I highly think you need to reach out to Merdler and that crew to give notice of whatever's happening here because they were engaged so much. give them an opportunity to speak on whatever it is we're doing here. Second, with this, superseding is the way to go, you know, whatever the community wants to do here, that's fine, but let's make the statement and I'll end there. But this should go back to committee for those two reasons. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that was very good discussion, and thank you, everybody. Thank everybody else for their patience. Okay, move on.
Okay, so the next resolution, Laura, is the one regarding the homeless shelter.
Mhm. Okay, it's very short. Whereas on November 10th, 2021, New York City's Department of Investigation released a timely report entitled DOI Report on Corruption, Vulnerabilities in the City's Oversight and Administration of Not-for-Profit Human Service Contracts. In order to combat fraud, waste, and other abuses by not-for-profit agencies in contract with the Department for Homeless Services, Department of Youth and Community Development, Department for the Aging, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Department of Social Services, and Administration for Children's Services. Whereas in fiscal year 2020, the city has expended more than $4 billion in contracts awarded to not-for-profits in order to provide vital services for its most vulnerable populations. Whereas over the past 7 years, the DOI has conducted dozens of investigations into corruption, waste, fraud, and other abuses, and pursued criminal charges against nonprofit executives and board members. Whereas DOI has provided in this report a clear blueprint for city government to increase oversight and combat corruption by enumerating 23 recommendations for reform in such contract management areas as budgeting, invoicing, and auditing. Therefore, be it resolved that Bronx Community Board 8 calls on our new city council members, borough president, mayor, public advocate, and controller to advocate for and enact into law these anti-corruption measures, standardized procedures, and best practices in order to protect and enhance the public trust. Now, obviously, this came to our interest because of the homeless shelter, but we also have, in addition to Department of Homeless Services, the Aging Committee, the Youth Committee, the Health Hospital Social Service Committees, all those agencies that reflect on our committees deal with nonprofits. And so across the board, it would be a benefit, I felt, to make this an advocacy issue that should the board support this, it be sent so that all 59 community boards could reach out to their elected officials to push for this, because what's going on is mismanagement and corrupt, and we've seen that. I would just want to point out, here's the report. It's about 75 pages, actually readable in English. One of the issues we had with AIPCI, for example, was the $500,000 salary for such a position. So in this, there's a suggestion here about safeguarding public resources, develop a standard citywide policy for evaluating and approving city-funded executive compensation, including potential limitations on the amount that the city will fund, requiring contractors clearly disclose other compensation on an annual basis, develop more, conflict of interest disclosure forms. There were things that touched upon things that are in the news now and that we've become aware of because we're dealing with the homeless shelter and Community Board 8. So I'm open to suggestions and feedback. Questions?
David and Ramdad have their hands up, Laura.
Okay, David. All right, let me go back to
Just
looking.
for
at participants.
clarification.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
in paragraph 2, whereas in fiscal year, we're not in 2020, we're not in 2021, we're in fiscal year 2022. And the city hasn't expended, the city has committed to more than 4 billion.
Well, the 2020 came from the actual report. That's their most recent of what they gave. I took that straight from the report.
All right, well, then it's not current. You then say had expended.
Okay, had expended.
But
Thank
just
you, David.
expended, you don't need has.
Well, we could just say spent. In fiscal year 2020, the city spent more than.
That's fine.
Let's do that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Laura.
Let me put my participants up. Ramda, your hand is up.
Just in addition as well, the first whereas, can we
Mhm.
also list the Department of Education, given that there are nonprofits that work in our schools as well?
The thing is, Department of Education wasn't mentioned in this report. They probably could use and deserve their own 80 pages. So you're absolutely right. But I strictly was going by the not-for-profits that were in this report.
Okay,
But
no
yeah,
worries.
why hasn't there been a report on that?
No, I just didn't get a chance to look at the report. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah,
for
no,
pointing that out.
that's, I absolutely, but I was strictly going by what was here on this. But yeah, that should be the next goal.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. Any other issues or questions? Kira, did you make the change on the second whereas instead of
Yeah.
has expended spent?
Laura, I will. I just have the
Yeah.
PDF up, but I will.
Okay, and then there's any
I think,
other comments?
Rosemary and
and
Ed
Ed.
have their hand up.
Rosemary, go ahead.
Yes, can you scroll down to the bottom of the document more? Thank you. That therefore be a resolved that we call upon our new city council members and borough president, whatever, okay, to have and enact laws. Okay, this is the one problem I have with the resolution. I read the report. It was a while ago, but I read it, and it was clear to me, maybe not to everybody who read it, that they were talking about the enforcement of efforts, the enforcement of what already exists, and I think that's what the basis of the report was. There may have been places that said maybe the salary of the person should be revealed. That's such a minor point. But it was DOI was encouraging, mandating the executive branch to enforce the laws that already exist. And that's my issue. I don't think the issue is so much we need new laws. We need new legislation. I think we need an executive that will enforce what was in that report. And so therefore be a resolve, we're putting on the city council now, we don't need new legislation. We need an executive that will enforce the rules that already exist. My only point, I will stop at that. Everything is fine, but I just think it's misguided to go to the legislative branch for the solution when all the laws and regulations are there. We need an executive that will enforce them. That's my only point.
Well, how about we advocate for and enforce anti-corruption measures?
But
We don't need law. I read it and I saw a lot of value in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the title alone, their report on corruption vulnerabilities in the city's
Understood,
oversight.
yeah.
So to me, Rosemary, would you suggest any changes in language for the be it
Oh my
resolved?
God, oh my God. Listen, I'm a brand new member to the executive committee. I read the report and my conclusion is that it speaks more to executive action than legislative action. I read this resolution, I offer this as I read it and I think it should be more executive action than legislative action. That's my only point. That's it.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't read the report, but my question would be if anybody knows, or Laura, is there any, I mean, at face value, it seems like this is a no-brainer, but has there been any counterpoint to this? Any public discussion of why this might not be a good idea to do this? Like I said, I haven't seen what the public response is, if any, to this. So is there a counterpoint to this? Is there something we're missing here? Because at face value, it seems like a no-brainer, but.
No, I haven't seen anything negative.
Rosemary, no?
Oh, what? I'm sorry. What?
Is there any opposition to them doing this? Have we heard anything?
Oh, no, oh my God, no.
No, I mean,
whatsoever.
from the public discussion, has there been any counter?
Well, maybe it
Oh, no,
just came out this month, so.
No. Oh, no, Ed, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying, I read the bloody report. I can't believe it. And I read the resolution. I just feel there's a misguidance there that the report deals with the executive has to be the.
Well, I'll go back and I'll look at this, Rosemary, and maybe work on that. No. I felt it was factual. I did speak to Eric Dinowitz, Jeff Dinowitz. I've already spoken to the elected officials about it. And there are enough things to change. They may have to change laws in order to enforce and do anything. I mean, what has happened in the past 8 years in terms of corruption is just, and we wouldn't give a damn, and I wouldn't even have noticed this report, except we're dealing with the issues that we're dealing with. With the AAPCI, and that's, otherwise I'd say most people are not paying any attention to this.
Laura, I also wanted to add, again, not reading the report, that I happen to agree that I'm sure there's a ton of corruption going on within nonprofits, but was there anything in the report that indicated that it was coming from a specific sector of nonprofits, or was there any problem area specific to nonprofits that raised this concern?
The way things are invoiced, the lack of auditing.
Overall,
and the budget. In other words, they send in any damn thing they want for reimbursement and nobody's looking at it. I mean, I read it and I felt like there's meat here. Maybe won't all of it, but there's enough meat here. There's enough fraud and waste. So if the DOI gave us this report, I take it seriously. I don't doubt their motives and I don't doubt the need for it.
And I don't doubt the report at all. Laura, you're absolutely right to focus it and send it to everybody. You're absolutely right. I just look at the therefore be it resolved. The emphasis is put on do legislation. The legislation is there. It exists. We need an executive that will enforce these things. The DOI report is saying there are things that need to be done, focused on the executive, not the legislative branch.
But right now,
that's my only.
Right now, no. I mean, our thing with AAPCI, Rosemary, is that this guy's making $500,000 a year, and in the time somebody else was making $1 million a year and $2 million a year, and so they're saying there's nothing that deals with this in the city that says there's got to be a limit. There are things that haven't been done. I don't know how the city council, I don't know. I'm not telling them what to do. Maybe I shouldn't tell them what to do. Maybe I should just say, read the report. It is a blueprint, and and figure it out how to fix the problem. Maybe we'll just do that in the Be It Resolved.
Well,
Ask our government to do something, fix the problems.
It is my sincere hope we have an executive that will say $500,000 is not acceptable. I do not want my agency to sign up with that. That is an executive, well, okay, it's only my personal opinion. I'm even sorry I raised it, okay? Sorry.
No, that's what discussion, it's good discussion.
I take it, that's fine, I take it
Hey,
back. Not
hey,
to the
Laura, though,
argument.
if Rosemary's right and these are already laws, then we shouldn't have an act into law. It just should be enforced.
We can,
Right.
I will definitely rethink that and look at that.
Yeah, the word enforce could replace those 3 words just fine, I feel.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. I said we could just take out enact into laws and just enforce, anti-corruption measures. That's what they're supposed to do,
Exactly.
I mean, why do we need this report? We need this report because look at what's going on with not just Department of Homeless Services is not even, from what I read, the worst. The worst was youth. In other words, those departments don't even audit. And I was saying, wow, okay, they give, Department of Homeless Services was not even the worst of what I saw. So good discussion. I think that I will change that, adjust it to make it motherhood and apple pie. And if there are no further comments, let's move on with the agenda, which I've lost. Okay. Any committee issues for discussion? Let's just go here. If there's no hands, we'll move on to follow up on.
I have something I want to raise.
Marty.
Yeah.
go ahead.
Laura, I had just 2 things.
Who's speaking?
Sergio,
Okay, Sergio, go ahead.
I think the exec should know a couple of things, mainly regarding Memorial Grove. We had discussions with Stephanie Ehrlich from Van Cortlandt Park and the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. It looks like, they may take over and have a home for Memorial Grove and the event. And we've got a meeting set up with the student volunteer organization. And I had a conversation with our esteemed colleague, Ramdat from Parks, and we're gonna try and document that it's a Parks issue, but while there's a special committee on veteran services, the special committee will take the lead on Memorial Grove. And if it doesn't exist, it would just go to Parks. Thank you.
Good. Any other
Yes,
outstanding
please.
issues?
Yes.
Marty, I'm sorry,
Yeah. Several of my issues, several of my issues came up tonight that I wanted to raise. And that is, I sent the memo out to all the chairs about the new OML requirement for what do you call it? For having resolutions appear within 24 hours before the meeting, so the public has the opportunity to see them. But also I recommend you to look at the minutes of LRE, where we discussed this whole idea of wordsmithing, which we did tonight on 2 resolutions. And the question is basically, if a resolution comes before the committee, and the committee votes on either the actual wording or the intent of the resolution, then the chairman is bound to bring that resolution to the exec committee first and the board second. But there can be times when, as tonight, wording gets changed. If the wording gets changed so that the resolution that now appears isn't the same in intent as the committee voted on, then it has to go back to committee, or the chair may raise it from the floor as an independent motion and not as a committee motion. This has come up twice tonight. And so if the resolution is what, oh, and also if the chair or designee is asked to do the wordsmanship and the board member, the chair, decides to contact board members for input, they can do that, but they can't convene a meeting of some members, because if some members, then becomes a public meeting. And so input from individuals to that person who is doing the wordsmithing is different than having a separate, quiet, off-the-record meeting that can't be done under the open meetings law. Speaking of which, as I mentioned at close of the meeting in November, the governor signed into law 3 separate amendments concerning the open meetings law. I mentioned them, but I want to go over them again. And I have one problem, and I'll get to that problem at the end. The first thing is the resolution, any resolution that is to be discussed at one of our public meetings, and that's when a quorum is present, that's a public meeting, or anticipate a quorum, then you have to notify the public as to what that resolution will be. This does not prevent you from having a resolution come from the floor, but if you're going to discuss a topic, then that topic needs to be in the open meetings, in the notice for the meeting, so that the community is aware that that conversation will come up and have the opportunity for input. Now, there seems to be somewhat of a confusion in this paragraph where it says, first of all, that I'll read, as scheduled to be a subject of discussion by a public body during an open meeting shall be made available upon request. So that means you theoretically don't have to notify them unless somebody requests it. But then a sentence later, it says, if the agency in which a public body function maintains a regularly and routinely updated website and utilizes a high-speed internet connection, such records shall be posted on the website to the extent practicable, lovely word, we'll come back to that, as determined by the agency or the department at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. So whether it's by request or not, we do have a high-speed internet connection, and anything that's to be discussed, a resolution that's coming up has to be out there. And as you recall, I mentioned that I contacted the Committee on Open Government specifically on this question, because sometimes you just, if I have a meeting on Monday and the community board is meeting on Tuesday, there's no way I have 24 hours to get that resolution out. But they pointed out to me that I just read those words, to the extent practicable. If it's not practicable, then it's impossible to get out. But then again, if I anticipated that this item would be on the agenda, then at least that item has to be there. And then this crazy thing where it appears that even though Sergio and I questioned and challenged this whole concept of what the law said about using internet connections, the new amendment allows for public streaming on the internet, so long as public notice for the meeting shall inform the public of the internet address of the website streaming such meeting, which means that what's been going on now since the pandemic of having Zoom meetings can continue. But I want to come back to that too. And the third item that's in the requirement under the new amendments is that each of the committees have 2 weeks to get their minutes out and posted if there's including the community board meeting. And if there's an executive session in which public is locked out, then you have 1 week to get those minutes out. Now, what I find interesting, a comment I made at the meeting may be totally erroneous. I shall read the single line which bothers me. This act shall take effect immediately and expire and be deemed repealed January 15th, 2022. Well, if it's repealed, then this is, I said there was no sunshine, but there is a sunshine. But the entire law becomes sunshine on January 15th, 2022. I find that hard to believe. So I would my guesstimate is that the legislature will renew this law, and that date will be further out. So that's all I want to bring up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. As we know, the ability to Zoom has a deadline of December 15th. Remember when September 1st, the governor issued that waiver to the open meetings law and said Zooms remote can continue. We're sending a letter imminently, asking for that to be renewed again, to continue past December 15th. We shall see. I've also spoken to the elected officials about it. Jeff he couldn't tell what was going to happen with that. But now that we have the new variant, I can't imagine that they're going to have us go back to in-person meetings when we're still in flux. So that's what our letter will say, and that will go out tomorrow. And I'll keep you posted on that. My fingers are crossed. Okay? I forgot to mention that. Okay. So, let me see. If there's no other business before the board, do I hear a motion to?
Hey, Laura, I
Yes.
just want to mention something really quick from the Public Safety Committee that.
Oh, sure, Ed, I'm sorry.
We're gonna be having Police Officer Jamshir from the 50th Community Affairs Crime Prevention Officer be giving an informational presentation on scams. And basically everything from internet scams to phone scams to check phishing to and I know everybody on this call has been affected everybody that I know has been affected by some type of scam, whether it's people trying to get your credit card information or stuff popping up. So it's been a while, but we've gotten them to commit to do a full presentation on the scams at the Public Safety Committee. So we hope everybody will show
We have
up.
to get the word out about that. What's the date of that meeting? December
It's
what?
the 21st, December 21st, the
Okay.
third Tuesday of December. And and this stuff goes, most of it is quality of life stuff, but it goes way beyond this to grand larceny, to all types of stuff. So
Oh, yeah, no, it's horrible. I must get 5 phone calls a day on my cell and everything. People trying to sell me insurance. I don't have a car. You know what I mean? Just you name it.
hopefully
Scam.
they'll give us some good information on how we
Right.
can prevent these things and spread the word. Thank you. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Ed. Is there any other issues? I don't see any hands. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second it?
Second.
Okay. Everyone have a wonderful night. This was a very good discussions tonight, very helpful. And this is a great team. Okay, so everybody have a great night. See you in 2 weeks. Okay, bye-bye.